We'll now begin the fourth lesson on the Maamer Godol Yihyeh Kevod Habayis Hazeh, which is the Maamer that the Rabbi said on Shabbos Mevorchim of, and the Rabbi edited it for Shabbos Nachamu, Tafshin Nun 5750. We're holding by the beginning of the fifth ois. Up until now, the Rebbe explained the greatness of the third Beis HaMikdash over the first and second, and specifically with the fact that the first and second were just there, and they symbolize and express the completion of the spiritual worlds. Whereas the third comes as a result, just like a Bal Tshuva over a Tzaddik, that it comes as a result of the destruction and therefore reaches a level that's beyond the natural world, beyond the ability of the natural worlds. In order to explain this, the Rabbi said we're going to first explain the whole concept of what is special about the Beis HaMikdash, which is not only the building, the edifice, the structure of the Beis HaMikdash, but even the place upon which it's built, the place of the Mikdash, is a special place that Yaakov Avinu, when he saw it, he said, Ein zeh kiyim beis alikim, that the Targum Onkelos explains, Leis dein asad hedyet, this is not a regular place. What does asad hedyet mean? Chassidus explains that this is not like the rest of the world that was created with the Asara Mamaris, the 10 utterances of Hashem. Rather, this is something that's beyond the rest of the world. And the question is, what do you mean? The Beis HaMikdash is also a physical space. It was also created with the 10 utterances. And on the contrary, this was the source and the root of all the other places in the world that were created with 10 utterances. So in order to explain this, the Rebbe explains that with the whole world, there's the idea of Shem Elokim. Elokim is that in essence, in truth, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Shara Yichud V'Emunah, the world was created by Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya is godliness that's above the world. And yet, in order that the world should be able to accept it, there's the concealment of Shem Elokim. In the Beis HaMikdash, Shem Elokim doesn't conceal. You have the essence of Shem Havaya, which is everywhere, and it's in full revelation. There's nothing that hides over it. In order to explain that more, the Rebbe explains the difference between the creation that comes from Shem Elokim and the creation that comes from Shem Havaya. That the creation that comes from Shem Elokim is in a way of Bereshis Bara Elokim. Hashem creates it, meaning that Hashem involves himself and encloses himself, so to speak. The godly energy comes into the physical world. Whereas Shem Havaya is in a manner of Yahalalu as Shem Havaya, Kiutziva v'nivro, it happens on its own. And the Rebbe explained that the difference between when the creation happens as a result of an involvement, and when the creation happens on its own, is that a creation that happens on its own is like the idea of Ila v'Alul, cause and effect, or Oyru Moir, the light that comes from the luminary. Now, cause and effect, the example for that is Seichel and Midas, intellect and emotions. When a person contemplates the intellect and contemplates properly the concept that he's understanding, then the emotion is automatically, it comes. Why? Because it's the intellect has in it inherently that emotion, and through deep contemplation, there's the effect that comes on its own. Similarly, Oyer and Moir, when the luminary reveals itself and expresses itself, automatically there's the expression of the luminary, which that's the light. Whereas, that's the concept of Yahalus Shem Havaya, that when the Shem Havaya, because the creations that come from it are close in category, they're connected in category to it, therefore it happens on its own. Whereas the opposite, which is Shem Elokim, Bereshis Bara Elokim, is that the Eibishter has to get involved in the world. That's the concept of something which is distant and it's incomparable to the source. Just like koyach and poil, potential and actuality. With potential and actuality, the potential is spiritual, the actuality is physical. The actuality doesn't come as a direct continuation to the potential. On the contrary, it's like a new existence. And therefore, it has to make it, because it's creating a new thing. On the contrary, it has to hide and create sort of a vacuum in order to make it happen. So that's what happens with the rest of the world. With the Beis HaMikdash, it comes automatically, so to speak, the place of the Beis HaMikdash. But now we're going to continue to explain it in Yihyeh. Before we continue, let's a little bit more understand the difference between cause and effect and potential and actuality. Cause and effect means they are both light. They're both energy. There's the godly energy that exists, and then there's the godly energy, which is also a spiritual energy, that comes from it, that's born from it, that exists as a result of it. Nothing new happened. It's taking something and bringing it from one level to the next. It's the same idea. Seichel, intellect, is one aspect which really inherently has in it emotions. Emotions is the next aspect which is revealing what there is in intellect. On the other hand, when you have potential and actuality, potential is a spiritual, it's a power, it's an ability. An ability is not the thing. To make that come from there to the action, to the actuality, you have to change gears, so to speak. Make a new thing happen. That new thing is a completely new existence. It's yesh me'ayin, or it's like yesh me'ayin. It's a totally new existence. And therefore, in order to get there, there has to be first a vacuum. Because to make a new existence is something totally different than what you had before. Take an example for that. The difference between when a teacher teaches a student and when a parent gives birth to a child. That means the power that comes, the hashpah, the flow that comes from a teacher to the student, which is intellect that's given from the teacher to the student, and the hashpah that comes from the father to the son, with the fact that the father causes the birth of the son. The teacher teaching the student, he's taking a student that can understand, that has a mind that's able to understand, that's able to grasp something, and he's teaching him an idea so that he should understand it. Whereas when a father causes the birth of the son, it's a new existence. It's an existence that never existed before. Now, in order to get there, as we know in every type of birth of a new existence, whether it's with regards to the idea of how a child is born, or in the physical example also of when a person takes a seed and puts it in the ground. When you put a seed in the ground, it disintegrates. There has to be a total, we have to go away from the previous existence, because that's not what makes this existence happen. It's now to get this previous existence only reached the essence, and the essence is the birth of the new existence. Let's understand it further as we'll see it now in Yihyeh in Ois number 5. It's known that when we bring in Maamerim of Chassidus 2 or more analogies for one specific idea, Why do we bring two analogies or more? Chassidus doesn't just bring a few different analogies. When there's a few analogies brought, there's a reason, and what is that? Because the analogy and the concept that we're trying to bring out are not exactly the same in every single aspect. Or and that's why we bring two or more analogies. Each one of these examples is explaining a few different aspects of the idea that we're trying to explain. It's the same with regard to what we're doing here. שבהיסבוס שבדרך ממילא המסהווה הוא בקירוב למהווה. Why does Chassidus bring two analogies with regards to something that the creation is in close proximity? It's in the same category, so to speak, as the thing which it's making come into existence. What are the two examples that we brought? Hamashal de'ila v'alul, v'hamashal de'eru ma'ir. We brought the analogy, the example of cause and effect, as well as another mashal of something which isn't exactly cause and effect, and that is light and a luminary. Why did we bring both of these? Huki b'hanimshal, gam b'yisavus shebederech memela, mishave davar chadash, sheinei be'erech la'makir ha'mahavem. Even though we are trying to bring an example of what the meaning of hu tziva v'nivro, that Hashem commanded and the creation happened on its own. Why? Because the creation that's happening is something which is be'erech. It's comparable and it's in the same category, so to speak, as the energy that's making it come into existence. What example do we bring for that? Ila v'alul, cause and effect. When intellect and emotion are on the same category, they're both spiritual concepts that's within a human being. Intellect and emotion are there, so that's why they're cause and effect. From the intellect, automatically there's the effect, there comes the emotions. Because you can't have a real cause and effect in something which is totally incomparable. Any type of cause and effect, take the idea of cause and effect, the domino effect as they call it. You knock something down, it knocks down the other thing, and it happens automatically. But that's only when they are both blocks or both physical objects that are in the same realm, in the same category of each other. What if you put a different type of thing in the middle? It stops the whole thing. Because it stands there and it doesn't let it continue to fall down. Cause and effect is intellect and emotion because they're both not physical. They're both connected to a human being. They're both the spiritual aspects that's in a human being. So it's not the idea of creating a totally new thing. It's the idea of taking something which is there and just bringing it out a bit more in an automatic way by bringing out the source. That's in the example of cause and effect. But over here, when we're talking about the Halalu as Shem Havayeh, we're talking about the creation, the existence that comes into being as a result of the Hishavus, the creation that's done by Shem Havayeh. It's not something which is the same. Actually, what's being created as a result over here is a new existence which is totally incomparable to the original, to the source, to Shem Havayeh. Because Shem Havayeh is completely spiritual, and whatever comes into existence from Shem Havayeh, even if it's a spiritual creation in a sense, but it's a creation, it's an incomparable idea. So now the question, therefore, that's something else that's happening over here. And that's why in this situation we want to bring another mashal. We can understand this also from the fact even by the existence that comes from Shem Havaya, it says he commanded and it happened. The Lashon Bria Meira al Hishavus Yesh Miyayin. The word Bria, creation, means an existence that's something from nothing. The Yesh Miyayin Ubein Areich, something from nothing, is incomparable. If we say created, that means it was a new existence that was created from nil, from nothing that came before that. That means there's a new existence which is totally incomparable to anything that was beforehand. So if that's the case, it shouldn't be revealed. So how is it that the existence that comes from Shem Havaya is still in a manner that the Shem Havaya is open and revealed in the creations that came from it? Hakavana bazeh, what's the meaning of this? Nirgash bohem sheina mitzius la'atzmam. It's felt in them that they're not an existence on their own. V'chol mitziusam izeh she'oida likim mahavesam mi'ayin liyesh, and that their entire existence is only the fact that the godly light makes them come into existence from nothing to something. As a result, they're nullified to their source. The creation is an existence, and perhaps it's a more spiritual existence, as we'll see. But in the end of the day, it's an existence. An existence doesn't feel in it the source of Shem Havaya, which is totally in a total different realm than it. It feels that it has a source. It feels that it's coming from a higher source, and therefore it's nullified to that source. Unlike a completely physical existence that comes from Shem Elikim, that feels as if it created itself, it feels as if it's its own existence. Because since the creations are totally without having any comparison or any type of connection to the essence of Hashem that creates them, it's impossible that should be revealed in the creations, no matter which they are, a light which is totally incomparable with not in their realm. Similar to the idea of koyach and payel, the fact that in a physical action, you can't feel the spiritual power, potential that's behind it. Let's try and understand this a little bit further before we go on. There's a famous saying from one of the Chassidim of the Mittler Rebbe, and he said, me compared to the Hillel Paritcher is like a cat. He said, what does it mean I'm like a cat? Not that the same distance that there is between a cat and a human, that's the type of distance that there is between me and Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, but rather that compared to Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, me and the cat are of the same meaning, of the same importance. There is no difference between us. And he continued, Rabbi Hillel Paritcher compared to the Rebbe is like a cat, and the same explanation of that idea. What's the meaning of that? Sometimes you can have something which has some type of comparison to another. You have two people. You have a wise person and a person who's not as wise. One is more wise, one is less wise. You have a big tzaddik and a smaller tzaddik, or a lesser tzaddik, or a totally not tzaddik. But the idea, the difference between them is in their levels. It's all in the same realm. Whereas when you talk about the creator and a creation, and similarly when you talk about a Rebbe who's be'ein roich to a person, to a regular human being. He's not greater, he's not smarter, he's not better. He's in a totally different realm that one can't compare the two to each other. Now, when we want to try and come from that one realm which is totally different than the other one, it's like al derech mashal when we have the concept of ilo v'alul. Ilo v'alul is also the chain reaction. There are those mikubalim, and we're not going to go into understanding their explanation at the moment, because obviously they have an explanation to what they're saying, but they come mikubalim before the Arizal. Many of them felt that the world comes in a way of ilu cause and effect. What does that mean? There's the midas, the spheres, each one sets off the next and sets off the next, and there could be a whole bunch of different levels from Atzilus till this world. The Arizal said it's impossible. You can't come from Atzilus to Bria, or from Bria to Asiya, or from Ein Seif to Atzilus, with even if there's billions of chains, of circles that are of links that are connected one to another. Because even if you have the longest chain in the world, the first link and the last link have some type of connection to each other. When we talk about the Hallelu Shem Havayeh Ki Utziva V'Nivro, what does that mean? Hashem commanded, the creation happened almost as if on its own. Why? Because by revealing the source, automatically the thing which is coming, the effect comes into being. And for that we brought the first analogy was cause and effect. Like seichel and midas, intellect and emotions. If there will be a strong revelation of the source of godliness, then the outcome is whatever comes out of it. The other idea that we spoke about was the Hallelu Hashem Bereishis Bara Elikim. Bereishis Bara Elikim means creating a separate entity. In order to create a separate entity, there has to be what the Arizal explains, which is the idea of tzimtzum, concealment. As a result, there now becomes a new entity, yesh me'ayin, a new existence. Perhaps to give a bit of an example of the idea with a Chsidish Maisa, which sometimes just by the fact and by the definition of saying a Chsidish Maisa, it opens up new channels of understanding. The Alter Rebbe sent his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, to go to the Alter Rebbe's mother, whose name was Rebbetzin Rivka, and he told him, the Tzemach Tzedek, that he should ask her questions because she still remembered, first of all, obviously, the Alter Rebbe in his youth. She remembered the Baal Shem Tov and the Chassidim of the Baal Shem Tov, the students of the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe's parents were followers of the Baal Shem Tov, and they both went to the Baal Shem Tov. They asked the bracha from the Baal Shem Tov for the birth of the Alter Rebbe. So they remembered, and the Alter Rebbe said to Tzemach Tzedek, ask her questions so she should tell you stories. She used to tell the stories to Tzemach Tzedek, who in turn told these stories to his daughter-in-law, Rebbetzin Rivka as well, the wife of the Rebbe Marash, and she in turn told these stories to her grandson, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and that's how we were told these stories. One of the questions that Tzemach Tzedek asked his great-grandmother, the mother of the Alter Rebbe, Farvas hat der Baal Shem Tov sich behalten von Zeiten. Why did the Baal Shem Tov hide himself from my grandfather, from the Alter Rebbe? In other words, we know that the Alter Rebbe was 15 years old at the time of the passing of the Baal Shem Tov, but the Baal Shem Tov had given clear instructions that no one should tell the Alter Rebbe about the Baal Shem Tov. He said he has to find out on his own, and even though the teachers of the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Sacher Ber of Lubavitch, and the Alter Rebbe's father, they all were students of the Baal Shem Tov. And yet none of them told the Alter Rebbe anything about the Baal Shem Tov until after the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. 1 year later, the Alter Rebbe then came to the Maggid of Mezrich. And so the question that Tzemach Tzedek had was, why did the Baal Shem Tov hide himself from my grandfather? And the Rebbe Rivka said the Baal Shem Tov had Mesiras Nefesh, to hide himself from my son, in order to do a favor for hundreds of thousands of Jews. Because had the Alter Rebbe gone to the Baal Shem Tov, there would not be able to be Chabad Chassidus, there would only be able to be Chagas Chassidus. And the explanation, in simple words, is that the power of the Baal Shem Tov was so overpowering, was so strong, that had Alter Rebbe met the Baal Shem Tov, he would have only been able to continue on just a continuation of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov as they were, like the other students of the Baal Shem Tov did. The students of the Baal Shem Tov, and in a certain sense even the Maggid, the Baal Shem Tov told the Maggid, the Alter Rebbe, he told him about the Neshama of the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe will come to you. And he said he will create a new path, which seems to differ from my path, and seems to differ even from your path. But you have to strengthen him with it. You have to give him strength and encourage him in his path, because that's the way that he's going to bring Mashiach. What was it, the path of Chabad, that it couldn't see the Baal Shem Tov? The other students of the Baal Shem Tov, they all took the teachings, the light, the intense light of the Baal Shem Tov, and they brought it down to the next level, and they expressed it, each one in their own way. But it was all the energy and the light of the Baal Shem Tov. And that's why it expressed itself in a way of chagas, of midas. The Baal Shem Tov's light was arich, atik, pnimius, akesa, the essence of godliness. But the way that it was expressed was by using it in the next level, but within the same realm. The Alter Rebbe needed, in order to bring the inner essence of what the Baal Shem Tov was teaching, to bring the inner essence, he had to reveal it in a completely new way. Take the essence of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, not the light, the revelation, the energy of the teachings of Baal Shem Tov, but take the very essence and reveal it in the new way of Chabad. In order to get that, there had to be a complete concealment, where the Alter Rebbe didn't meet the Baal Shem Tov physically, but rather took the essence of the Baal Shem Tov. And that's the meaning of Kiyutziva of Bereshis Bara Elikim. Creating a new essence, a new existence of Yesh Me'ayin, which that's the ultimate purpose of creation. But in order to get there has to be a complete concealment of the godly light. Whereas when it's Kiyutziva v'Nivro, there's the godly light that's revealed, and therefore there's a more spiritual energy, but not the physical world that doesn't feel its source at all. So now we continue to say that in truth, it's not that the essence of godliness is revealed in the creation, because in the end of the day it's a creation, but it's rather that it still feels its source. It's not exactly in the same way as we said now in the example from the Baal Shem Tov. Rather, it's the idea that the source is felt, that there is a source, to the extent that the creations are bottled, they're nullified to their source. Whereas in Bereshis Bara Elikim, it becomes a new existence that doesn't feel a source at all, and like we said earlier, it doesn't have bittul. However, in the end of the day, the creation that happens is a separate existence, which is not like cause and effect, that it's a direct continuation of its source. It's a new existence. But it's a new existence that still feels that there's a source and a bittul to the source. But if it's a new existence, then the mashal, the analogy of cause and effect, doesn't suffice. Because in cause and effect, the whole point of it is that it's a continuation of the same existence. What's it more like in this aspect? It's almost like the koyach and poyel, the potential and actuality, where it's a spiritual existence that has to hide from the new existence in order to make the new existence come into being. Ulehesif, now the Rebbe adds in the comparison to koyach and payel, which that was more what we used for Shem Elikim, for the existence that comes from Shem Elikim. The bekoyach upayel, by potential and actuality, power and action. Kivan shekoyach inyanei hu lifayel, upulasa hi b'derech islapshus, being that power, potential, it's all about bringing things about. And what it brings about, the action, is in a way of islapshus, of involvement and becoming enclosed within it. Lachein, therefore, bazeh shakoyach poyel esapula mizgale hakoyach v'rak she'ein mizgale bapula atzma. Now the Rebbe is saying the following. In a sense, even in koyach and poyel, it reveals the source even more than this havos, the existence that comes from Shem Havaya. Why? What's koyach and poyel? Koyach and poyel is that you have a potential, you have a power, and then you have the action that comes from it. Now, the potential is spiritual, the action is physical. They're as far away removed from each other as possible. Nevertheless, what's the purpose of the potential? Why is there a power? Why does a person have strength? Why does a person have various different ways that he can express himself? Why does a person have all these talents? For what? In order that it should come out into action. So although the action can't in any way reveal the potential, because in the end of the day, the potential is spiritual, the action is physical, they're as far removed as possible, but nevertheless, the fact that there's an action reveals the fact that there's a potential. It's not revealed in the actual potential, but in the fact that it's there, it reveals the idea that there's a potential, that there's a power. Unlike this is when we talk about this havos that comes from Shem Havaya, kivan sheishavos shemishem Havaya b'derech memela, shezeh meira shu muflamin in haishavos, being that the existence that comes from Shem Havaya is, so to speak, automatic, which shows that Shem Havaya is completely removed from the idea of existence. Harei einay mizgale gam al yidei yishavos hanivraim, kivan shu mufla mi'inyin ha'yishavos. Now the Rebbe takes it all the way to the other direction. We were just talking about the fact that the Yihyeh, the existence that comes from Shem Havaya, in the end of the day, recognizes that it has a source, and therefore it's nullified with a total, complete nullification. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, that's true, but in the end of the day, even koyach and poyel is more connected to one another than the existence that comes from Shem Havaya and its source, which is Shem Havaya. Why? Because in koyach and poyel, the fact that there's an action, in the end of the day, it doesn't reveal. In the action itself, because it's physical, you don't see the power that is behind it. But in the fact that there's an action, you see the power. Because without a power, there couldn't be an action. Whereas in the existence that comes from Shem Havaya, it's so far removed that it's as if it happens automatically, because there's so much of a divide. There's so much of a disconnect between Shem Havaya, which is godly energy, and the existence that comes from it, which is an existence, which means it's something, even if it's a spiritual something. The divide and the disconnect is so powerful that you don't even see in the fact that there's an existence. Shem Havaya, because the fact that there's an existence shows that there's a power that makes it happen, but not a power that made it happen automatically, which is as far removed as possible. So that's where we're taking, in other words, we're taking now two sides to the coin. The one side to the coin is the fact that the existence that comes from Shem Havaya is in a sense a spiritual existence which is completely nullified to its source, unlike the existence that comes from Shem Elikim that doesn't even feel that it has a source. On the other hand, the removal from Shem Havaya, which is godly energy, it's above the world, to something that there should be a creation of an existence, any type of existence, is so far removed that even the fact that there's an existence can't reveal its source, which is as far removed as possible from it. And therefore, that's why in Chassidus it doesn't suffice to bring the mashal, the analogy of Ilah v'Alul, cause and effect. It's not exact. Not only not exact, it's completely, in a certain sense, it's completely off target. There is the idea still that through Shem Havaya expressing itself, automatically there becomes the creation. But then there's the other side, the fact that Kibi'ilah v'Alul, with cause and effect, Akiruv de ha'alul ha'ilah, hu she'alul, hu be'erech ha'ilah, the closeness that's between the effect and the cause is the fact that the effect is connected. It's with a connection and the same realm, the same category, so to speak, as the cause. To the extent that where is the cause revealed inside the effect itself, because in the effect there is the cause, like we said, in the emotions there is an aspect of the intellect that caused it. That you can see in the emotion, the intellect that gave birth to it. Why? When a person is aroused and awakened to love a specific thing, because of the fact which comes from the fact that he understood and he grasped in his mind how good this thing is for him. Harei nirgash b'ha'ava atzma sha'avase la'davar mitzad ha'tev shebai. In the love itself, you can feel that why do I love this thing? Because of the good that's in it. And moreover, how do I love this thing? As much in the same manner as the good that's in it and the way it's good for me. Because in the emotion I can feel fully the intellect that gave birth to it. Whereas with regards to these havas that comes from Shem Havaya, it's as far removed as possible. So there's the closeness, because they're both spiritual in that sense. They're both a spiritual energy. But then there's the complete distance that the Shem Havaya is so far removed from what came from it that you can't even see by the fact that the thing exists. You can't even see in their Shem Havaya, because Shem Havaya was totally disconnected. So now, in order to explain the fact that even when the thing that comes into being is incomparable and is completely disconnected from the source that brought it into existence, it still nevertheless has a closeness to its source. In other words, we're explaining over here an existence that comes from Shem Havaya, meaning that there is some type of erech, there is some type of connection between the source, which is Shem Havaya, and what exists from it. So we bring an example of Ilah v'Alul, but in Ilah v'Alul, the Alul is revealed, the Ilah, the cause is revealed in the effect. So now we want to bring something which is totally disconnected from its source. And yet they're so close in that sense that when you reveal the source, automatically the thing that comes from it becomes revealed. So in order to explain this, we need to bring now an example of light and the source of light. Here we have the example. Why? Because the light is a shine. It's a ray of the luminary. It's completely disconnected, in that sense, completely incomparable to the source, to the luminary. A light is a small light. The light, compare the light to the sun. It's not even a comparison. And yet, that as a result, what do we have? That the Maamer, the source itself, is not revealed in the light, just like we said by the savos of, in other words, unlike cause and effect. Through the light, we can only know the fact that there exists a source, but you can't know the essence of the source because the light of the sun is something which is so far removed from the sun itself. But mikol makim hu bikiruv lahamoir shenirgash b'mikayru v'atleilav. Still, the more you reveal the source, the more the light is revealed, and you can tell and recognize in the fact that there's the fact that there's a sunlight. In the end of the day, the sunlight feels that it's totally nullified to its source, which is the sun itself. So that's why we brought the second analogy. So if that's the case, we should just have the second analogy that we're trying to explain that there's something which is completely incomparable. It's only a ray and a shine of its source, and yet it feels its source in a way that it's batel. And similarly, something which is created from Shem Havaya feels a complete bittul, a complete nullification to the source. Hello, however, in truth, even this analogy of the light and the source also doesn't suffice. Why? By the light and the luminary, the source, kiruv ha'elamoir, ubitulay love, uboifen sha'oir einay mitzius klal v'chol inyan shugili amoir. In a light and the source of light, what does it express the closeness of the light to its source and its nullification to its source? In the fact that the light is completely not an existence and all it does is reveal its source. Sunlight is not something, it's not a thing. It's something that's a whole thing is just to reveal the sun. The sun is a source of light. Sunlight is nothing else but an extension of the source. So on one hand, it's just a ray, but its bittul, its nullification to its source is in a manner that it's not a new existence, it's not something else. Whereas in the nimshal, what we're trying to compare it to, which is the existence that comes through Shem Havaya, also in the existence that comes from Shem Havaya, as we said earlier, it says, He commanded and it became created. The Inyan Bria, as we said earlier, the idea of creation is it's not a continuation, an extension, a revelation of the source. Nivro means that there's a new creation, something new came into existence. In the sunlight, it's nothing new. And this we can understand, the fact that it's a new creation, that it's a new existence. True, it comes from a source to which it is nullified, but there's an existence that comes from that source, a more of a spiritual existence, as we were saying, but it's an existence. But nevertheless, we can see that from what it says in Tanya, Shegam bim hoisa isavus mishem havaya, sheloi al yidei atzimtzum d'shem Elokim. Even had there been the existence, would have come from Shem Havaya, not through the concealment and the tzimtzum of Shem Elikim. There wouldn't be the cover of Shem Elikim. We explained earlier that in order for the world to be its own existence and not become completely nullified to godliness, there has to be Shem Elikim that covers over the source, that it can feel itself as an existence. Because in Shem Havayah it feels its source. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that even had there not been the tzimtzum of Shem Elikim, hayu mishavim hanivroim me'ayin liyesh, there would still be an existence of creations. They would come into existence from nothing to something. Vinivro, they would be created. They would exist, but their existence would be in a way that they're completely nullified to the source, like when the ray of the sun is inside the sun itself. So there is an existence from Shem Havayah. It's an existence that feels its source and is therefore completely nullified to its source, but it's an existence. Unlike sunlight, that's not an existence at all. It's nothing new. It's not a different existence. And therefore, in order to explain that even when something's in existence, it could still be in a way that it's close to its source. To the extent that you could say nivro, it exists, but it's an existence that's still it happens automatically because it has a closeness to its source. For that we brought the analogy of Ilav of cause and effect. Why? Because the effect is an existence. Midas, emotions, is not just a revelation of the intellect. It's an existence. It's an existence that feels its source. It's an existence that feels in it that its whole existence comes from something. But it's an existence. Intellect and emotions are two separate things. It's not only a ray and a revelation of the intellect. And nevertheless, even though it's an existence, and it's not merely a revelation of the cause, it's still close. It's with close proximity, and it's close in its essence to its cause. So now we have two analogies. We have the analogy of cause and effect, which has an issue. The issue is that in cause and effect, there's a complete closeness between the cause and the effect in a way that it's of the same category. Whereas Shem Havayah and what exists from it is two totally separate things in a complete way, even more so than power and action. And then, so that's why we bring the mashal of light and source, but the problem with light and source is that over there's no new existence. Here we want to have a new existence that's nevertheless nullified to its source. And that's why we bring both analogies. B'Shleimer, the Rebbe says we can now say that tam al zeh mashal dila v'yalo. Just like it's exact, the fact that we bring two analogies, it's also exact which ones comes first. And in Chassidus, in the Maamer, the mashal of cause and effect came first before the mashal of light and the source of light. Why is this? Who? The main chiddush, the main novelty in the fact that creations that come into existence from Shem Havayah are nevertheless nullified to their source, to Havayah, even though they exist, but they're in existence as completely nullified. What's the novelty in that fact? Is that even though they're in existence, mikol makim, nevertheless nirgash b'hem begili the Shem Havayah, it's felt in a revealed way within them the light of Shem Havayah. That's understood mostly from the analogy of ilav of cause and effect, where they're completely nullified to their source. What we're trying to bring out is the fact that despite it being in existence, it's still nullified to its source. That's more felt in the idea of cause and effect. In other words, the concept that we're trying more to bring out is that it's similar to cause and effect, that there's an existence like the effect, and yet the existence is nullified to its source. However, in order to explain the fact that the revelation of the source is possible even when there's something which is completely incomparable to the source, like over here, so we add the second analogy of light and the source of light. But our main point that we want to bring out is that despite the fact that something exists, it's still completely nullified to its source. And then we also bring out that it happens to be in a way where it's totally non-existent almost compared to its source.